Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hector Moraes. I have been studying Logosophy for the last 13 years. We shall begin our panel with which theme is mental defenses as a foundation for a better life. And you may be asking yourself, what is Logosophy? And well, Logosophy is a new science focused on the conscious evolution of the human being and all that entails. It provides powerful tools and an original method to understand oneself and how to evolve consciously. For example, you can begin by identifying the aspects on which you have to work on and to improve. Then you form an image of what you want to become, and by following the method, you will learn how to achieve this goal. Logosophy was created by Argentine humanist thinker Carlos Bernardo González Pecotti in 1930, which makes this the year on which Logosophy will complete 90 years. Although it started in Argentina, nowadays there are many cultural centers throughout the world where students gather to deepen their understanding of this new science and how to participate in study activities. Logosophy also possesses a unique pedagogy, and in Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, there are many logosophical schools where many generations of students have benefited from this educational method. Logosophy is a very practical science where the main field of experimentation is life itself. It allows you to take control of your life and the experience you live and to understand them in a new light. Today we shall hear Natalia, who works as a doctor in the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Hector. Good evening, everyone. I'm Natalia. I'm a Logosophical student and a medical doctor in the UK, where I live. I'm gonna put in the chat a link if anyone would like to know more about Logosophy. Would already be available, but we will send it again at the end of the presentation. I commenced having contact with Logosophy when I was growing up. Logosophy has been very important to me throughout my life, providing a strong foundation to make my steps with confidence. Hector already said, Logosophy is a science of self-knowledge and conscious evolution. In this presentation, I'll show you some logosophical tests and a few books. But every time I do that, please rest assured we're not trying to sell any book here. Logosophy is a non-profit organization, and all of the books are available to be downloaded for free on the website logosophy.org.uk. And those are the books. What does it mean, self-knowledge and conscious evolution? It means Logosophy provides powerful tools and an original method to understand oneself and evolve, knowing why and how to make those changes. First, identifying the aspects to work on, then forming an image of what I want to become, providing a method to reach it. Logosophy is way beyond today's topic, but today's topic has been very much important to those steps with confidence in my life that I've mentioned, as it's about mental defenses as a foundation for a better life. So I'll talk about how that I have been building with the logosophical study a better foundation for my life, how this study has impacted me, to say the least. Back in the days in my childhood, I came into contact with something that became very special. I read a book that is a collection of advices from a father to his son. And I was about 9 at that time. And this father, who was giving the advices, was obviously no one less than the author of the science. And I brought a paragraph of the book to show you. If you like games, try to make yours always pleasant so that they cause a good reaction. Make sure that your jokes never hurt the feelings of your listeners. So for me, at the age of 9, this was quite important, and it made the break time a lot better. At that time, I was beginning to train my observations to learn something from my life. And I began to observe jokes and games in the playtime and to label them as good ones and bad ones. Quite a simple label system. I started seeing that there were jokes that everyone had a laugh, and there were jokes that not everyone was laughing. And sometimes one even ended up crying. For me, the ones that didn't undervalue anyone else, I labeled as good jokes or good games, and the bad ones were the ones that often hurt the feelings of others. So usually after making a joke or during a game, I used to ask myself, is everyone happy? Have I offended someone? How can I avoid that my words belittle others and leave me feeling bad about myself for having hurt someone else's feeling? How to make this break time friendly? At that point, I found that some people usually say the bad jokes to stand out, and nowadays some of these jokes are even called bully or the act of bullying someone. But what are the things behind those actions? Years went by, studying logosophy and looking a bit deeper into jokes or words that carry within themselves this germ of bad intention. The concept of harm represents this bad intention. For example, as schools, when children make fun of others, pointing out the mistakes or flaws in front of others, sometimes using them as targets, bullying. This is the evil thought that translates the bad intention into a bad action. Thinking about those bad actions and trying to put myself in other people's shoes, I would question, if it's me doing that through all my life, if I keep having this attitude towards people around me, what will be the consequences that I will face as my own inheritance, if that makes sense? If I don't like these bad jokes and I can see the sad end to this behavior, why do I often observe this kind of attitude around? Now, this is a little bit of a difficult question, a little bit more difficult question. Studying Logosophy, I found this text from the author. The most serious evils that burden man are ignorance and unconsciousness. From these evils results everything man does to the detriment of his own being, as they continually predispose him towards deviations and misconceptions. What knowledge am I lacking to avoid recurrent mistakes that make me look back at my attitudes and regret what I have done? When I lose patience with a family member or a friend, when I don't protect a good intention from people around or the environment, when I want to say something at a Congress meeting, but get stopped by the thought of what are the others going to think? When I want to say something meaningful to someone else, but the words don't come out. Or in this case, when I hear someone saying something bad and ignore it. If I can identify why I don't stop this harm, I found another text from the author I'd like to share. How much shame would a person feel believing himself to be fair or kind when he sees himself converted into the sad vehicle of evil, of humiliation, or of bad intention? How clearly the loss of all purity and of all self-respect is noticed when humiliation takes hold of the individual and transforms him into a low and vile being. So the purity was the good intention. And if I don't stand by it, I'm not respecting myself. Before my contact with this logosophical text, I used to think that being a vehicle of harm was to help it spread, with actions or words expressing ideas that contaminate people's minds and make the environment hostile, aggressive, critical, etc. And throughout many years, I have been taking a position, of which I consider to be quite common, that is of not stimulating gossip or criticism whenever I heard it. And even to distance myself from those who used to belittle others. I would call my attitude as avoiding a conflict. The bystander doesn't always realize the power they have, isn't it? And I used to think that the simple fact of not stimulating the strength of these actions was positive, but I still end up feeling bad about myself, and I didn't know why. This new view that the author presents translates into words what I had already felt. Shame. Shame for letting words pass through me easily without an attempt to block them, without any resistance whatsoever. And I've discovered the reason why I was feeling so bad. I found out that something was happening. And ironically, what was happening was my omission. Because there was something that was the cause of the action that I disapproved. And my omission was allowing that to continue and grow. The omission helps this bad force to grow because it provides no obstacles. So despite being a passive attitude, it turned me into a vehicle of harm. Now, how often have I omitted, and which situations could I have avoided? So many. Then after this, my biggest question was, how would it be possible to take action towards this form of harm without creating a conflict? Please bear with me while I talk about two very short, distinct experiences. The first experience, I was shadowing a cardiologist consultant clinic when one of the patients arrived complaining and diminishing another cardiologist before anything. And after about 4 or 5 attempts, he finally managed to change the subject and focus on a treatment plan. When the patient left, the cardiologist turned to me and said, "Be careful when someone tells you bad things about someone else, because in the future, it may be about you that they'll say bad things about." This was an advice that came through experience that was so interesting that got stuck in my mind, because it's a habit, and habits come from thoughts. So studying Logosophy, I could understand it even more. So I would ask, why are there times when I say something I didn't want to say? What makes me act in a way I don't want to? What strength moves me, pushes me to do those things? Logosophy presents the concept of thoughts. Logosophy affirms that thoughts are psychological entities generated in the human mind, where they develop and even acquire a life of their own. So thoughts are autonomous agents that influence the behavior of human beings. In this case, influencing the patient to criticize a professional, like a puppet of this thought that she ignores. The second experience I also had in my workplace, but this one was a bit more recent. A couple of co-workers were saying bad things about a colleague, also a consultant. And at that moment, I could identify the thought of harm, and I felt the responsibility to interfere. I felt that I couldn't be silent anymore. And between the three of us, I was actually the only one that was discussing cases with him. So I had a knowledge that they ignored. And I began telling them about his background and the logic behind the care plan. And it reached a point when I saw that I was actually being able to defend his image without creating a conflict, hence not being a vehicle of harm. It was a very rewarding moment. As a result of all of this, I found that if the thought of criticism that contaminates the environment is ignored, that is, if I do nothing to oppose this thought, this does not weaken its action. On the contrary, it ends up gaining more strength with my lack of action, as it passes through me without resistance, gaining strength in the mind of who is saying them, and finally reaching someone else. So it still escalates. And it would leave me feeling bad about myself, ashamed of not taking a positive action. This feeling was now changed to a non-conflict positive action. I was very happy with the result of this. I cannot say what happened in their minds, but they both seemed calmer after this, and I felt that there was more understanding in the workplace. So in this new life, I can identify better opportunities to be a vehicle of good thoughts. An attitude that requires me to have more attention to what is behind the words, learning to see the thoughts, and acknowledging my thoughts, managing them to reflect a more constructive words. Then my words can send a message of a mind that thinks and not a mind that is led by thoughts. And using the strength of the knowledge that these words have and being a vehicle of positive thoughts. And it's so interesting. This criticism represents not only a thought, but a harmful thought. There's no good outcome from it. And in general, if we ask people if they support gossips at work, they would say no. It's a common knowledge. So why it keeps happening? And that was when I realized that this harmful thought makes use of something called psychological deficiencies. So I made myself more questions. Why are there thoughts within me that sabotage my own will? What hinders my actions from being in line with my decisions? How can I let my attitude be the opposite of what I had set out to do? Logosophy presents the concept of psychological deficiencies. Logosophy so denominates the negative thought which insisted in the mind exerts a strong pressure on the individual's will, continually inducing him to satisfy its insatiable psychic appetite. Now, if I'm not the one making decisions in my life, then who am I allowing to do so? If I don't have the reins of my life, then who has them? In medicine, we're constantly studying and reading. And sometimes when I sit down to read, something crosses my mind to deviate my attention. Like I thought of sending a message on WhatsApp, or getting water, or drinking something, or eating something, getting some chocolate, or that I'm too tired and I need coffee, or to go on social media. So many thoughts. I find two interesting aspects whenever that happens. So first of all, I like to read, and I had chosen to do that at that time. Secondly, those thoughts were not there before. Where were they? So why so suddenly so many thoughts appear in my mind? If I picture my mind as a bus, it's as if I'm trying to drive the bus and all those thoughts are coming and going as they please through the open windows, like wind, trying to make me change what I had set out to do with my time. Not even mentioning when they try to convince me to drive the bus themselves. Whenever I listen to those thoughts, I realize that I end up procrastinating, spending way too long on a task, wasting energy and not accomplishing what I had wanted to do in that time. As a consequence, that would often make me feel so frustrated with myself, draining my energy. Some of those thoughts are so developed that they camouflage as things I actually needed to do. But using the same example, sitting to study or read something, a thought would cross my mind saying, hey, don't you need to do the laundry? Or what about the lunch dishes? Wasn't that something I needed to buy in a supermarket? What was that? And obviously, if I just be chilling, watching telly, they would have never crossed my mind. I'd already be distracted. The author lists more than 40 deficiencies in this book that I showed. They usually don't act on their own, they like forming a pack. On those examples I talked about, I could identify lack of willpower, inadaptability, disobedience, lack of discipline, so many. And there are many, many others that the author explains in this book. However, there was still a question I had not answered. How do I protect my mind from thoughts that influence me to do things I don't want to? In the topic, mental defenses, the author alerts. The logosophical method recommends to recruit an ever-increasing number of thoughts in the mind, drafted as soldier thoughts, whose duty is to defend the mind. As in a military organization, such thoughts would be grouped in various regiments. If all of them exercise the same activity or specialized in the same aspect of the cognition, the other points of the mental fortress would be vulnerable to any attack. So recruiting the soldiers that will defend my mind, and in various regiments. By the way, the author talks about them on the books I showed as well. The example I gave was just about trying to focus. There are many other examples I identify that those soldiers are needed in my life. These soldiers are exactly the opposite of the psychological deficiencies. They are qualities, a knowledge that will annihilate the deficit, so one can enjoy the positive result provided by the accomplishment of the task. During the coronavirus pandemic in hospital, we're frequently being exposed to patients carrying the virus. And depending where we are, not always with all the personal protective equipment we would like. The masks we would like, gowns, face shields. This has been causing a lot of stress, anxiety, and fear inside hospitals around the world. There will always be things affecting our lives despite our will. And they are in a level beyond what we can do to change them. I have been learning with Logosophy that there are two ways I can face this reality. I can face it with thoughts that stress me, leave me worried and anxious, or I can face it with courage, doing everything I can within my reach. I've been learning to calm my mind and reflect, using the knowledge I have of the situation, instead of letting the thoughts free to create chaos in my mind. Logosophy is therefore a science of conscious evolution, commencing by recognizing what happens inside oneself. It is a process of self-knowledge, but consciously. An individual work within oneself, because each one can only know about their own process. But in collaboration with the practical experiences of the other students, like I did here today, we gather the pieces and form a better understanding. Logosophy brings a new concept of life, so needed nowadays in this chaotic and confused situation that we live in. Thank you very much. And I'm going to share again in the chat with everyone the link if you want to know more information about Logosophy or enroll in the information course. This is the website, logosophy.org.uk. If you would like more information, you can also email us on info@logosophy.org.uk.